Whispering Woods is finally seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. Genevieve Joyce is incredibly thankful to her team for pulling through when things got tough. After weeks of battling avian influenza, Imogen Chen declares all animals free of the infection. Nevertheless, Wesley Parsons keeps a watchful eye on the various species under the Haven's care, and Genevieve realizes he has come a long way from the rookie zookeeper he started as. In the meantime, Anna Kingston aids a volunteer group in South America as SylvaCorp continues its harvesting in the Amazon. But what can a group of people really do against machinery that plows through the rainforest? As SylvaCorp carries on with its path of destruction, the volunteer leader, Jimena Alvarez, does not stand down and is injured by a falling tree. In the plains of South America, other resources can be found. Edmund Joyce has been tasked with mining limestone and granite for SylvaCorp's endeavors, and Arthur Joyce is determined to stop him. But Edmund has been offered thousands of dollars for this contract, and Arthur isn't sure speaking of the animal's plight will do much to convince him. Welcome back to Whispering Woods, Wildlife Haven.
Hey everyone, Spira here. Thanks for joining me today as we add another new habitat to the South America Dome, Baird's Tapir, and Greater Rhea. So this will be a multi-species habitat. Congratulations for those of you who guessed which species will be in here. Had a lot of good guesses, but not quite right. Few guesses of animals that we already have in the dome, and then perhaps some guesses of animals that will be in the dome eventually. So I started off with creating some fencing. This is a fence based off of inspiration I found on ZooChat once more. If you haven't used ZooChat for zoo inspiration, then you definitely should. It's very, very helpful. We're going to steal our rock formation that we made a few episodes ago for the bush dogs. I'm deleting all of the foliage, and I wanted to make it more grassy because we are building a very big open enclosure that reflects more so the grasslands of South America rather than tropical. So here I'm putting out some of the plants that I'm going to be using for this, and then I'll use them to create my template. Once I'm happy with this first version of the rocks, I'll be putting that all the way around the edge of the enclosure. Maybe not quite all the way around the edge, but there we go. Trying to make it look a little bit different by spinning it around. I'll be removing or adding a few different rocks in certain places. Here we have a tunnel. That tunnel is going to lead towards their backstage area. And on the sides, I'm going to raise that terrain so that it meets the rocks. So this will not be an enclosure that we do today, but it's just preparation for a future enclosure. And it will help give our Tapir and Rhea a bit of a backdrop right here. So using my stamp tool, this is super useful if you're trying to get cleaner edges. Maybe not the most clean, but a lot easier than if you're trying to use the flatten to foundation tool and then smoothing some edges or pushing and pulling the terrain. This is just the easiest way to get those nice clean edges. I'm going to put a temporary gate at the back and outline my enclosure with the null barriers so that I can get some of my animals in here and check out their traversable terrain. So there are two species, of course, with the hitbox of the common reeds. It's a little bit difficult to get through here, but very quickly, as we move some things around, the tapir now has full access to the enclosure. And he decides to lay down in the middle of the walkway rather than just going into his enclosure. It was at this point that I realized that the tapir not only likes water, which is something that I knew, but also needs to have water in its enclosure. Like, it's a requirement. So I decided that it's not going to have a pool out front because that kind of breaks my vision for the grassy PAMPAS style enclosure. Instead, we're going to build a concrete pool in their backstage area. So I'm outlining that with a bunch of concrete blocks, adding some vents just in case there's water overflow of any type, and just generally setting up this water level so that it works for our tapir. This is something that I did play around more with. I wanted the water to go higher up, so in the final cinematics you'll see that the water level is actually much higher. And of course I'm going to add that to our enclosure before realizing that, hey, the animals were in here, so now it looks like they've escaped. So while our keepers take care of that and I attempt to find any female on the market, we will continue with our build. So spot the difference. I actually created parts of it because I didn't want it on both sides of the walkway, and it's going to come in really handy because I can now use it to extend the fence that's on the viewing area for this enclosure so that it doesn't look like it just ends. And we're going to create sort of a standoff barrier here so that we can also add some foliage on the outside of the habitat. Speaking of foliage, here is a beautiful look at some of Captain Callum's custom grasses. So these are all going to go on the outside of the enclosure because they do use ponytail palms as a base, and our animals don't like those, even though I feel like they should. Like, that feels like a South American plant. Anyway, I'm gonna also add some more reeds to that, some bramble, some buddleia just to fill it out, and then those will be the plants that end up inside of the enclosure as well, so that we can create some sort of continuity between the plants on the outside and the plants on the inside. Before I get to all the planting, I'm going to place down my enrichment items. So here is my path trick. If you haven't seen it before, place down a piece of path, and that will help your terrain not move as much or at all if you place it correctly. So that's our forage enrichment, which both animals will be using, our herb scent marker, little rubber duck in the backstage area, and then also this curtain. I don't normally use this, but I thought it was a nice way to screen off that walkway a little bit. And for some of the enrichment items like this fruit spike, I'm going to add bamboo just to cover up that ugly yellow interior part. Alright, on to some rock work. The Pampas region is a lot of farmland, it's a lot of long grasses, so that's mostly what we want to do here, but I also didn't want to make it super flat because then it's a lot more boring, obviously. So there is some variation in the terrain, and I'm just adding some rocks to the central part here to outline it and also make sure that the animals aren't just walking up the back of it. They're hanging out more so at the front and then walking around this formation to get around to the front. Plenty of faux rocks as well, obviously. And then we're going to paint the terrain. They do like a lot of grass. Wish the grass wasn't quite as green. I did dot a bunch of soil and sand into it as well so that it wasn't quite so vibrant. That is a great trick for those of you who also don't really love how green it is. Just set your intensity to about 20 to 30% and then just click, 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 click all the way around your enclosure to break up those big green patches. While I continue with that terrain work, now is a great time to also bring up, there has been a new DLC announced and I personally am very excited. There's a picture in the corner right now. The honey badger is our key art, and then we also see some sort of monkey, hopefully a lion-tailed macaque, maybe a langur of some sort, and we do have an elephant in the background. Personally, I really hope that that elephant is maybe not a new subspecies, but a hint at the fact that we're getting a bunch of older animals remastered. I'm not going to hedge my bets on that one. Let me know what you think of the new DLC announcement in the comments below. These are the doom palms, and I just sank them into the ground. I thought they provided a lot of really nice texture and a slightly lighter shade of green. It's slightly more yellowish, and it works really, really well in my opinion. And as you may have heard in a previous episode, I was really, really not loving the fact that I had no type of grass to put in here because it is supposed to be a grassland enclosure. So I installed a mod. Yes, you're finally seeing the day. And this mod replaces the buffalo grass with just grass. And it is part of every single biome as well as every single continent. So it doesn't set off any animal plant requirements. And honestly, I am so happy about it. Thank you, Blob, for that suggestion. I am just living the life now. So here's the enclosure. With the addition of grass, it looks so much better. So now that we've got our greater Rhea and our tapir in the enclosure, it's time to take a look at the backstage. setting up my concrete walls in our backstage. A lot of tapir backstages just seem to be very plain, lots of walls. They're not particularly tall, they're quite short walls. And then a few gates I'll be adding here just so that we can section off these pens if we need to. Those pens will be full of bedding for our animals, and these gates will be on sides so that the keepers can just push a button when they need to and the gate will close. I'm sure they could also just be pushed if necessary. I feel like Tapir and Rhea are not particularly dangerous animals, so the keepers could probably be in here with them without too much of an issue. So there's one gate, just slide in that over, and here are our switches on the wall so that we can move these things around. Also going to decorate up this entry part with a whole bunch of pallets and barrels, and also added a few enrichment items back there. This corner here, we're going to continue our planting from the habitat just to fill it in a little bit. And of course, all of the detailing, so many grunge pieces along the edge of the water and all over the walls as well. And here in the entrance, some dirt that the animals have tracked in. So here we go. Here is the finished enclosure for the tapir and the Rhea. I was finally able to find 2 female Rheas. So we have 3 greater Rheas in here, as well as our lone male tapir. Here's a view from the secondary viewing area into their forage enrichment. And even the view from the Capybara Hot Springs is pretty awesome. Our tapir does enjoy hanging out in the backstage. You can see him exiting the backstage area here. Not quite finished, we'll finish this up as we finish the enclosure that will go on top of that raised terrain, but for now the animals seem to be enjoying it. Here's another view from the main viewing area. And I'm so happy to see these animals enjoying this hanging enrichment item. They are so cute hopping through it. Our South America dome is filling up quite nicely, but we still have 5 species to add of the ones I have planned. So make sure to comment down below what you think those next species will be. And next time we'll be back with more of an aquatic habitat, so there's your hint. Thank you for watching. Remember to like this video, it really helps me out a lot. And if you would like to support me a little extra, you can join the nest with the button down below, or just hit subscribe so that you know when the next episode comes out. I will see you next week. Bye.